Dear friends, last couple of weeks we heard the parable of a farmer. I was then reminded of an interesting story about an Irish nun. She was about 98 years old and very interested in farming, and they kept some cows in their backyard. As she was seriously ill and lay on the deathbed, all the sisters came around to comfort her, to make her last days very comfortable for this Mother Superior. And one of the nuns brought something to drink for their mother, and she refused to drink. Then, after a while, another junior sister went to the kitchen, took some warm milk, and poured some Irish whiskey into the milk. And then she brought to the mother and gave to her. And then Mother Superior took a sip, then a little more, and then before they knew, she finished the whole cup of milk. And she was seemingly very happy and satisfied. So other sisters thought of asking her for an advice. They told her, "Mother, would you give us any last piece of advice before you leave us?" And Mother smiled and said, "Yes, whatever you do, don't sell that cow," she said. Recently, I was in Colorado Springs and visited the famous Garden of the Gods. There is always something special and awe-inspiring about mountains. On the top, the air is very clear and crisp. The panoramic view of the surrounding countryside lifts us from the hustle of the city life, and it also raises our minds and hearts to God, our Creator. The top of the mountain is always a natural place for encountering God. It is no wonder then in Bible, God often chooses a mountain top to reveal himself to his people. It was on Mount Sinai God gave the 10 Commandments to Moses. Jesus gave the important teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. He often retired to the mountainside to pray. He was then crucified on Mount Calvary. In today's Gospel, Jesus is transfigured before his apostles on Mount Tabor. Peter, James, and John are with him, and they will be with him in the agony of the garden as well. Moses and Elijah are also present, speaking with Jesus about his coming passion and death. Moses is the lawgiver and Elijah the great prophet. In the presence of these two prophets, the heavenly voice comes, saying, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." For Jesus, the Transfiguration was the turning point in his public life. Until now, Jesus was very popular. He was captivating the people with his teachings and miracles. The Transfiguration gave Jesus a foretaste of his coming divine glory. And in the strength of that joy, Jesus had the strength to endure the death, passion, and his suffering. But most of all, the Transfiguration gave Jesus another affirmation of his Father's love. As we know, at baptism in the Jordan River, the voice was heard when the Heavenly Father affirmed Jesus, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." Now his Father says, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." Do we listen to the Lord? On Mount Tabor, the disciples glimpsed the divinity of Christ. They realized that Jesus was more than a teacher. that Jesus was more than a reformer, a religious reformer. Jesus was more than a healer. Now they know Jesus, someone who is much different and divine, who cannot be seen with their ordinary eyes, but with the eyes of faith, because Jesus is truly the Son of God. For the apostles, it was an awe-inspiring experience because they had never seen their master like this before in their life. Peter, filled with a lot of enthusiasm and consolation, said, "It is good for us to be here. I will build 3 booths, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But this was only a preparation for the things to come in their life. With Jesus, they must descend the mountaintop and go down to the valley below and then on to Garden of Gethsemane. On Mount Tabor, they didn't want to leave, whereas in the Garden of Gethsemane, they didn't want to stay either. In the Garden of Gethsemane, they didn't want to stay because when Jesus was arrested, they all fled for their own safety. Dear friends, the Transfiguration was the mountaintop experience for the apostles, which prepared them for the coming persecutions and trials. The Mass is our mountaintop experience, which prepares us for the trials of our day. The Mass is not a transfiguration, but it is a transubstantiation in which bread and wine are transformed into the body and blood of our glorious risen Lord. And in the joy of receiving the communion, we say with Peter, "It is good to be here." Now the question is, what was our mountaintop experience when we felt Jesus was near to us? He was real and present in our life, and we did not want to leave. However, soon I will say the words, "The Mass is ended. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord." Thus, we have no choice but to leave and face the events and trials of our daily life. But having been to the mountaintop, indeed, we are the beloved sons and daughters of God. That doesn't mean a favoritism, but service to others. Just as Jesus was identified as the beloved Son of God, but also destined to die for others. Just as Jesus was chosen to be the beloved Son, we are also called to be the favorite sons and daughters of God. And we are called to do the same, to serve others and to spend our life for others as followers of Christ.